I recorded a video for about 5 minutes before I just came live here on YouTube. I did that for a reason as well, because I wanted to block, you all can still hear them, but I wanted to shake up the predictability and the routine. And I wanted to get it recorded so that I can upload it at a later time and date. Their routine, again, these are folks that's into stuff that they pretend to not be into, that they even may pretend to disdain or dislike, or they mock, and then they'll project it onto the target. So as my son went to the restroom, these people's morning routine, ritual abuse, they do at night and they do early in the morning. These people, like I said, most of them, I believe some of these folks are on drugs. They're on drugs, they're taking things.
Stop weighing on. Keep weighing on.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second.
You do this by yourself or just for
As I was saying, though, to those of you who may come on later, they're in his energy as I speak. When he sounds exasperated and drained and tired, that's because they're doing spell work. Hoovering over his apartment and around his apartment. In some cases, it is people that are sitting in cars in the parking lot, walking and driving around, doing spell work. Okay, now, as he went to the restroom, I pre-recorded a video so that I can provide it later, hearing the things that he was saying, that I believe is maybe acting out some of the things that they're doing. Now, one of the things that I know that they are going to try to do, yeah, he's Lord have mercy, he's picking it up. One of the things that I know that they're going to try to do, this is all a part. This is all a part of the relatives and those that have been assisting them, making it seem like his condition is out of control, or I know exactly what they're doing. I see their plan, and it is an epic fail. I'm going to get my son, per his own desire, out of Texas. So epic fail. I'm going to get him out of Texas. So his little trashy relatives and the trashy authorities and their hired help, epic fail. He said removed from Sheila Anderson. They lie about their connections. So all of this is a part of the plan to make things seem like it's not real, it's not happening, blah, blah, blah. Attack all this and that, make someone seem unfair, blah, 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 blah. Epic fail. He wants out of Texas. I want out of Texas. I'm getting him out of Texas. But I am going to share what they're doing to us on the way out. So on the way out, they're still doing all of this stuff. They're also trying to distort any resources, or they're either trying to stop, block, or distort, taint, and exploit any resources. That's what they're up to. Okay, in terms of assisting getting me and my son out of Texas. Now, one way or the other, we're out of Texas. And in terms of caring about processes, I no longer do. Processes is something that they have exploited. So I no longer care about that. What you all hear is not his autism. It is not simply a flare-up of parasites. It is not simply a mood, chemical, hormone imbalance. Why is he saying this year's been tough to handle? That's because there's lots of people doing a whole lot of nasty things to him. For somebody that does not bother people or have a life or not out there in the streets doing nothing, why would he say that? Why would that be in his mouth? And that's because there's a whole lot of weirdos on this property and around the world that they have enlisted, that he's on altars. A lot of sickos. A lot of prejudice pricks, racist pricks. A lot of pervs. A lot of people trying to get hazed and elevated in these cults, trying to get their next level of occult knowledge. Trying to get that extra money. This is why he would say that. This is a toxic environment. And it ain't toxic because of him, and it ain't toxic because of me. This is a toxic environment. Don't be fooled by the fancy schmancy look. Fancy cars in the parking lot. There's a whole lot of blood on every last majority of them fancy cars in that parking lot. You just can't see it. Don't be fooled by Lululemon Linda. Don't be fooled. By the fancy building and structures. Don't be fooled. This is a toxic environment. You have people that are skinheads here. You have people that are a part of motorcycle gangs here. You have people that are religious zealots and extremists that are targeting us. Out of their ignorance, out of their colonized brain. So that's what it is. It's a colonization, it's a hijack. If a belief system gives you a calling to terrorize somebody, you're in a fucking cult. You can call it assignment. They call this shit assignment. They can call this shit purpose. All that they can fancy it up, doll it up, all the hell they want. They're a fucking cult. Any spirituality, religion, anything in between, if there's a link of fear, domination, control, and the intrusion on another, it's a fucking cult. If it includes overriding someone else's agency, someone else's autonomy, someone else's energy, mind, body, and soul, it's a fucking cult. If that program and belief system gives their devotees and implies that it is okay to steal from a disabled person, it's a fucking cult. To steal from anybody for that matter. But I'm just adding emphasis because if something is as godly or spiritual as people are acting, that's why I say it's a colonization and brainwashing. If their system of beliefs tell them to stomp all night on their floors, on dolls, and putting shit in their shoes on people that are different than them, it's a fucking cult. Or because they mammy, or they auntie, or they homegirl, or they homegirl's mammy, auntie, cousin, grandma, niece, whatever, is don't like the person, and because they don't work there, no, whatever, it's a fucking cult. TB. If a belief system, a program, a spirituality tells its devotees that it is okay to intrude on the civil and human rights and privacy of another, it's a fucking cult. If a religion, a spirituality, and belief tell its devotees that it's okay to commit federal offenses on those that are different than them, it's a fucking cult. And I don't care if it's just a family that's operating in it. At the end of the day, it's a fucking cult. If beliefs, at some point, there needs to be, let there be a difference between outreaching and stalking. At some point, let there be a difference. Let there be a differentiation. Let there be a clear distinction at some point between what's called outreaching for Jesus and stalking and harassment. If a religion, spirituality, or belief influences its devotees to abuse their position and power and authority, it's a cult. It's a fucking cult. If a religion, spirituality, and belief implies to its devotees that it is okay for them to break every law under the sun, but to then try to single out and scapegoat the ones that they don't like for the very things in which they do and beyond, it's a fucking cult. If a religion, a spirituality, a belief system, a philosophical or political bent implies to its devotees that the ends justify the means, Machiavellian, it's a fucking cult. If those same systems, like I said, imply that it's okay to tamper with federal U.S. mail, it's a fucking cult. If a religion, a spirituality, philosophical bent, or political bent implies to its devotees that it is, once again, that it is okay to abuse their positions and powers in society to blackball people that they don't like because of them being different than them, or whatever weird hair up their ass, or their own insecurities and traumas and conditioning, it's a fucking cult. To stop the person from being able to stabilize, it's a fucking cult. Yeah, like I said, these are monsters in plain sight. These are monsters with fancy cars, fancy suits, fancy BBLs. These are monsters with big Bibles, briefcases, and sage bundles. These are monsters that are children in adults' bodies who, some cases, grew up privileged and had shit handed to them and didn't have to fucking develop a legitimate, healthy identity and personality whatsoever. And if they were not privileged in the sense of material, they were privileged in the sense of they had too many people kissing their ass. Nobody from the beginning, perhaps, provided proper development and training and exampleship in a proper and healthy way. So in other words, it turned them into a fucking narc. It turned them into a fucking sociopath. And as a result, they can see no wrong in their own conduct and behavior, and so they conduct as bullies, monsters in plain sight, monsters that's buttoned up from the neck up down. Monsters that have an appearance of modesty and religiosity. That targets and vomits on those who are bold, courageous individuals. Those who can see past illusions and bullshit. If spirituality and religion and beliefs implies to his devotees or their God, implies to their devotee that it is okay to steal the intellectual creative property of someone else, it's criminal, it's disgusting, it's occult. If somebody's religion and spirituality, philosophical and political bent says it's okay to poison somebody, it's certainly a cult with a Jesus stamp on it. If a religion, spirituality, and philosophical bent tells its devotees, see, it's brainwashing because some of it is in the Bible, which makes these people feel okay with it. They'll cherry pick and read places in the Old Testament when it comes time for them to deal with those that they don't like. But when it comes time for them to deal with and address themselves, they're in the New Testament. Yeah, that's called cherry picking. But yeah. It's New Testament and grace and grace and everything grace. And when it comes to them, just as if, bitch, and all of that shit, when it comes to them, go run into the altar of the Lord and the confessions and the blood and all that. When it comes to them. When it comes to their targets, those that are in the world that they would say is worldly, fascinatingly enough, they're the most worldly in a sense in which how they use it. I'll put it this way. But when it comes to those that they don't like, then it's Old Testament. You know, the word of the Lord, you know, it does says you go into the enemy's camp. You know, there's scriptures where he sent the spies, bitch. And, you know, that's in the word. Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Not when it comes to them, though. When it comes to them, pervs, murderers, killers, stalkers, incestuous molesters, people who try to sacrifice and kill their own. It's just, you know, God is the only one who can judge me. God is the only one that says, judge not lest ye are ye. But they're judging and taking actions based on their judgment. Hypocrite, again, it's a fucking cult. If a religion, a spirituality, philosophical, political bent causes their devotees to be callous, indifferent, inhumane. This is government and religion now. I'm hitting it now. Government and religion. It's a fucking cult then. If a system then targets an individual based on their individuality and their differences and their uniqueness and all those things out of ignorance and the fear, feels entitled to terrorize and torture that said individual, however you want to flip this pancake, at the end of the day, it's still a fucking cult. It's abuse. Period. On a community scale, likewise, when someone has been a part of a city, a state, a community, a town, and they're like the Lattimores, if you will. The Lattimores are a fucking cult. If everybody blindly follows and believes everything that the leaders say and don't question, don't have proper judgment, don't evaluate nothing for themselves, and even if they do sense something wrong, they'll still go along with it, it's a fucking cult. And if people are scared, old grown motherfuckers, 6'3", if people ooh-wee. If folks have an undertone of fear and are scared, that's already a red flag. It's a cult. If a person has fear and scared to have a view and an opinion, to decide something differently, to express and have agency and autonomy, if there's a fear to say, hey, I don't, with all due respect, blah, blah, I don't agree. I'm not with this. I want to leave. I no longer feel like this is resonating with me. And if that said group, if that said organization, if that said community, if that said religion, church, entity, whatever, smiles and nods, because that's the more covert style, smiles and nods, but then execute vengeance, passive aggressive vindictiveness, blacklisting and all that, that's the same shit, bitch. It's a fucking cult. To try to make an example out of those who don't want to be a part of, it's a fucking cult. That ain't no movement of supernatural. That's a movement of a bunch of bullies with power and access to resources and obsession, black magic. It's a fucking cult. Ain't no movement. Telling his devotees to go around with t-shirts on and giving tracts, simultaneously stalking and harassing somebody, there's a misfire there. There's something off. It's a cult. if a religion, spirituality, philosophical, political bent has high demands for its devotees and everyone else, but gives special concessions for themselves, in other words, don't require that they themselves live up to par, but they require they wave a judgy finger, clipboard, and ink pen, it's a cult. It's a fucking cult. Scarlet letter, just like the scriptures, the leather bound book that they cherry picked through. If the hoe is pointing at somebody else for being a hoe, it's a it's a fucking goat. How you hoeing in 2020 and you want to point at somebody's teenager hold'em? That's a fucking cult. Because see, it's hypocrisy. Cults are threaded with hypocrisy. They have an appearance of piety. But if a fly was on a wall, you know the truth. If a fly were to follow them in a car and all that, there's a secret that you know the truth. When they think nobody's watching, you know the truth. So it's projection. They become obsessed individuals with the critical eye because they are not addressing themselves. They're not really living up to what they're hollering and hooping and hitting them notes on. They still operate like a pimp. Ooh-wee. I mean, shit. Like a fucking gigolo. Still got that vibe. See, I know all about it, baby. Folks don't know. Know all about it. The one that I called father was a pimp. I know all about it, honey. Just like I know all about that religiosity, still with that vibe of pimp on it. Pimp and gigolo vibe. I know all about that shit. And have a bunch of Pygmalius Jesus version. You know, it's the same shit. Because once upon a time, guess what? I was that pygmy shit. Once upon a time, sitting there saying, oh, pygmy. I'm your helpmeet. I'll steal, kill, rob, and destroy. Oops, that sounds like Jezebel. Oh, I mean, I'll... I'll use the Bible to beat up people, and then we'll live like trash in secret. Pick me. If a religion, spirituality, philosophical, and political bent implies to its devotees that it is okay to be operating nepotism, hypocrisy, double standards, for whatever reason, it's a cult. Because if they want to pick and choose when they're strict and stringent, that's the same vibe. When they're lenient and when they're strict and stringent based on their own biases and prejudice, it's a cult. If people that brags about, let's just say within a friendship circle or a family circle and group, that they, just amongst themselves, okay, this is like more their inner circle. Let's say they brag about, working the system and the programs, government systems and programs, with housing, low income based, anything that's system based, whether it's housing or something else. Let's just say these are people among their group, they brag about how they know how to work those angles to such a degree that the companies have to end up paying them or giving them money. In other words, instead of, how if it's housing based, you have a certain amount of rents that you supposed to pay that is based on if it's income based, whatever, And let's say the individual, brags about how since they're so smart and so thrifty and so could find ways and finagle and all of these things, that these very companies, instead of them paying, they have to end up giving them money every month. Now, stick with this. If those same individuals are then the same folks who are trying to imply or hate on or stalk or harass or scapegoat or single out someone that they are claiming is getting over, it's hypocrisy. It's a fucking cult. If you don't see the hypocrisy, I can't help you because I actually just laid it out. People who always have a hookup, streaming, hookups for streaming, hookups, different, all sorts of things. So as it pertains to them, that's what we're talking about. The concessions that are made, that's hypocrisy. That's a double standard. It's a cult. In other words, you can bend the rules for yourself and your cult members. That's the definition of hypocrisy and nepotism, especially if they're using family. If this is your homegirl, your family, that's nepotism, preferences, preferential treatment of any sort. Whether that's an in-law, outlaw, ex-law, whatever the relation, it's a cult. And cults are nothing more than high school. A bunch of high schoolers with some knowledge of things that they should not have knowledge of and access to. Because like a high schooler, this will be exploited and abused and mishandled. for their every lust and whim. A high schooler is full of raging hormones. They're hedonistic at its prime. Moral compass is 0% for the most part. Anything to get their pleasures met. And that is what these cults are. These adults with all of this wisdom. I'm not going to say wisdom. I'm going to say knowledge. Wisdom would guide them differently. So I'm going to say knowledge. With all of the access and knowledge, power, resources. This is the definition of giving a teenager a Ferrari, a Porsche. A disaster in the making. That is what cults are. Teenagers with a bag of tricks, writings, rituals, and misuse of whatever positions that they've weaseled themselves into in society. Exploitation of those things. A teenager would mishandle authority, and that's what this is. A teenager is going to have preferential treatment for their friends, their homegirls, their homeboys, the jocks, the whoever they pining for. It's a teenager. Is it not? Am I lying? Is that not how we conducted as teenagers for those of some of us that can remember our youth? You're pining, anything to fit in, anything to be a part of something. Anything to belong, anything to get your needs met. Those who wanted to be popular, and then if there was a way, you betray your nerd friend in the movies. You clown your nerd friend that you actually like because, the popular kids. So you'll say all the nasty things because that's what they want you to say, because everybody's laughing and hee and ha. So you're going to go along with it because you want to fit in the group. Isn't that what high school was? So are cults anything different? Cult situations, cult families, cult places, they operate the same way. They control their members, whether their members know that they're controlled or not. Their members do not have agency. They do, whether they know it or not, they don't. They are not allowed to have independent thought. That is punished. Even if it's punished in a passive aggressive way, it's shunned upon, it's punished. Withholding, this is what abuse is. Withholding starts to happen in family structures, communities, group settings, you name it. You want to have a difference of thought, we're going to make an example of you. We're going to tamper with your resources. We're going to withhold affection from you. We're going to give you icy glares and stares, the scarlet letter. Until you say all hail to the magic conch. SpongeBob. We're going to make things difficult because we're going to manipulate every situation that we possibly can. We're going to make phone calls. We're going to contact our people in high-low places. And we're going to Darvo affect the hell out of them so that there's elements of truth to what we're saying. We're just going to swappy switchy-roo the narrative, the roles. It's a cult. My son wants out of Texas, and I'm going to get him out of Texas. He wants nothing to do with his relatives. I'm going to make sure that. They have objectified him just like they've objectified me. They dehumanize us, which is why, as a cult, true of a cult, which is why they are comfortable with abuse, which is why they can sleep. They have no upper chakras, no conscious. They're just existing. People like to believe and wear the outfit of I am a good person because I go to church 3 days a week and I pray for an hour every day and I fast 40 days and 40 nights and I give tithes and offerings and I donate to all of these charities and I am always opening the doors for the older ladies and men and the handicapped and I cursey and shit and say yes ma'am and yes sir and I talk in soft docile tones and I say Jesus at least 6 times in every sentence, and I dress modestly, and I don't smoke cigarettes, and I don't do drugs, and I don't do alcohol, and I don't party in club no more, and you know, I live right. Now that's funny. I live right. I have a clean life full of dead men's bones. And the leather-bound book that they cherry-pick through. The Jesus, the version, the Jesus they claim to know, that they reference clowns, all of them in their face, in the leather-bound book. Clowns them. Cold clown. Vipers. Why did he say that? Vipers, hypocrites. Throw all this shit. Fuck all of you. If you was throw all, tell all this shit of your fake asses. It's your pretentious, prissy ass. You're fake. Judging people. You hypocritical son of a bitch. Get your ass. You don't even see me, motherfucker. You dumb motherfucker. But you sure got this good and plenty down pat. I'll give you that. You know how to quote some shit. But you're stupid. Full of fear and control and envy and hate. Dead men's bone. Clean on the outside. A pastor I once was under used to have fun with that. He was fun. He really was. But see, my whole point is everybody miss it. It's in our face. It's in our fucking face. Because it sounds cool to hear, but what it's implying is where the real is at. Full of envy and jealousy and all manner of wickedness. Full of trauma. Full of programming, conditionings, all sorts of shit. The blind leading the blind, and they all fall. Yeah, we say that, but what does it really mean? Colonized, maybe? Because everything that I just talked about here on this video is cult behavior. It's abuse culture. It's hypocrisy. It's using the Bible as weapons. Using any bent, any proverb, philosophical, whatever angles, knowledge, because you're going to have intellectual narcissism. Okay, so all of it. It's this abuse culture. It's this, we make concessions for ourselves. But those that we don't like, we want to go in hard on. We want to fine-tooth comb them. We want to look for, we're projecting. We want to look for every flaw and hang them on the tree. burn them at the stake. Because that's us vomiting the truth of ourselves onto that person. The fact that we are hypocrites, infidels, whatever it is, that's what it is. Obsession. Obsession is not a purpose when it comes to intruding on another's life. Dead man's bones, sitting there stalking people, talking about blessings. Need to quit. Okay, listen. What God, I'm gonna air quote godly. I'm gonna do it like that. Of light, source, godly, spiritual, intellectual, woke, hashtag, whatever. I guarantee you, they're not conducting. They're flawed. They make mistakes like everybody else. But I promise you, this stuff that I talk about here, in terms of these folks, I don't think so. They ain't in no given apartment complex nowhere on earth sitting there stomping on no ground throughout the night because they think they're going to take back the enemy's camp, to take back what they stole, bitch. They ain't doing that shit. They have a sense of groundedness and practicality and wisdom to themselves. They ain't doing that shit. Especially if these people got, the house, it's a household of more than one, or people there are sick or disabled in the environment. They ain't doing that shit. That's why I say these people give themselves away. They don't operate like that for nobody. That's not the definition of godly. That's not the definition of spiritual. That's not the definition of nothing pure and good and right and left and up and down and all around in and out. That's distortion on steroids. You doing that shit. And they sure ain't walking around with no Bible, doing some Bible curses, bitch. On somebody disabled. That's colonized brain, hijacked mental depravity. Listen, I had issues. I'm going to continue to prove points over the years and give as much examples as I can provide. I had issues with how I was treated and so forth in my own family of origin, yes. You all hear me talk about different stories and things that happened to me, yes, and that is my free will to do. It's empowering for someone to be able to talk about their story when they've been silenced the majority of their life. Okay? But here's what I want to say. Even with the things that happened, even in my various changes and seasons when I was on a religious path and they were what we would say of the world and hoeing and streeting and drinking and driving and doing all manner of lasciviousness and debauchery. And even aside from that, I did not use my religion or my spirituality or anything else, my dislike of. I didn't use any of those things to decide, okay, very well, then I'm going to just stalk them. I'm going to just stalk them and steal their shit. I'm just going to stalk them and do baneful work on their offspring, on their kids. I'm going to curse them into oblivion. I'm going to sacrifice them. I'm just going to stalk their asses. Proxy. I'm going to hoover their lives. Through my churn. I'm going to go, as soon as I get my taxes, I'm going to go hire a practitioner. You know why? I have upper chakras. My heart chakra is intact. There's a level of groundedness. No matter what I've gone through, that has always been there as a part of my essence. I'm not my circumstance. See, I learned that circumstances are being manipulated. I didn't allow my disdain, my upset, my hurt, my opinion, my view, all of those things to push me into actions repetitively to cause harm, theft, sickness, disease, misfortune. I did an action. Me telling my story is not the same as them doing what they did, and they know it full fucking well. I didn't spend the next 10 years. I didn't go join a cult and offer my nieces or my great niece and my great nephews. I didn't join a cult and offer a nigga I started dating. No, I can't do shit. I didn't join a cult so I can get a job, so I can get that big break. And offered my family members are old, sickly, so that's why it's 3, 4, 5 motherfuckers dying back to back. Oh, I didn't offer. The disabled and elderly and sick as offerings, and I'm gonna be their little doula. I'm gonna be their fake little nursemaid so we can finish the deal. I didn't do that. I told my story. I tell my story. But that is not the same. Abuse culture tells the targets, shames the targets for speaking about the atrocities done to them, and that's backwards. They support abusers. They hold abusers in high honor. They have respect for abusers, pedophiles, molesters, energy harvesters, sex traffickers, human traffickers. They have respect for those that will sacrifice their bloodline to have their name up in lights. And that's sad for humanity.